This lesson focuses on the ecological model. The goal is to identify and define components of the model and to explain how an ecological model can be used to understand the context of development. This model was proposed by Yuri Brofenbrenner. He argued that individuals were nested in multiple systems. So here in this model you could see that the student is at the center and that the student is nested in the microsystem, which is nested in the mesosystem, which is nested in the exosystem, and nested in the macrosystem. Yuri argued that the individual was influencing these environments as much as these environments were influencing the individual. So we talk about this relationship being a transactional relationship or bidirectional. So his model was a transactional model. His model definitely contributed to our understanding of human development because he discussed the context in which individuals live in, and so it allowed us to provide an explanation beyond an individualistic lens to understand how the individual exists and develops within a larger context. So let's break down the ecological model. At the center you have the individual. So for example, you might have a male 8-year-old child who is diagnosed with ADHD. This child is nested in the system, the microsystem, which is our next system. And in the system you have individuals that the child has a direct relationship with, so mom, sister, grandma, classmates, maybe a teacher or teacher aide. There's a child with mom. Mom has a direct influence on the child, so in terms of caretaking activities, there's a direct influence there on the child. Then the next system is the mesosystem. This focuses on the relationships of the individuals in the microsystem. So for example, if a child has ADHD in the school, they might have a IEP team or an individualized educational plan team, and this would include a psychologist and maybe some speech therapy and the teacher and maybe the parent and of course the parent. And these individuals have a relationship with each other that indirectly affects the child. So if the IEP team discusses resources for the child, that will have an indirect influence, although the child may not be there. The relationship between mom and grandma, mom and teacher, and the children's classmates all have an indirect influence on the child. So maybe mom and grandma are in the same household and they're very supportive of each other, and that might decrease the stress in the household, which then indirectly affects the child. The next system is the exosystem. In this system we examine agencies that are within the community. So for example, there might be a resource specialist program at the school, maybe there's an after-school program, maybe some sports activities, maybe there's a church in the neighborhood. All of these have an indirect influence on the individual. And the last system is the macro system. This is the largest system and incorporates cultural values, beliefs. So for example, policies, for example, IDEA, which was established in 1985, that provided guidelines in terms of resources for individuals with disabilities, would be in the macro system, as well as even just general attitudes or beliefs about individuals with disabilities. So the times we live in dictates the beliefs that we have, and therefore also has an influence on the individual. Later on, Yuri added an additional system, which is the chrono system, and he argued that this model was not stagnant, but rather changed over time. And so it's important to understand the times we live in, as well as how this model may look over time. So for example, we can think about how IDEA has changed from 1985 to today. We've switched from not just examining the quantity of resources that individuals receive, but the quality of the resources that they receive. And we can think about the beliefs that people have today versus the beliefs that people had 40, 50 years ago about individuals with disabilities.